What's going on, everybody? Another mailbag for you guys right here. I'm going to be answering questions that were posted on Eric's mailbag last week. Now, short intro, one little thing I gotta get to though. The site launch has been postponed 7 to 10 days. That's not even something that's in my control. I am having the site made by somebody else, and they needed an additional 7 to 10 days in order to get that launched. But that website should be launching shortly. We should have a new date sometime soon. I wanted to get that out by now, but I'm looking forward to it, and that should be up very, very soon. On top of that, I will launch new merch in the next month or so. I want to make Blazers Uprise hats, and so I could wear one in my videos. You know, it'd be cool to have some Blazers Uprise hats. And then I want to make like a Blazers Uprise lanyard and just different kind of stuff that you guys might like, and that will go on sale on that new website. So I like using these mailbags to kind of give you guys a little update, but that's all I got for the update. Let's jump into your guys' questions from the past week. The Brennanator says, how are you feeling about Whiteside? Should we keep him off the bench or re-sign him? And Whiteside didn't look too good off the bench to end last season, so I'm not as strong on re-signing him. If we let him walk for nothing, it would suck because we could have traded him at the deadline and maybe gotten back a serviceable player that would have been a good fit long term, maybe gotten back a contract that we could trade this offseason, because obviously we can't trade Hassan Whiteside because he is a free agent. But if we could, I would like to see an Aaron Baines or Derek Favors to replace him. I'm mixing up my words here. I think they'd be better off the bench. The only question with that, though, is do we need to use the mid-level exception on a different spot to fill? Basically, everything's just fluid, so we'll have to wait and see what our offseason looks like. I wouldn't hate having him back, but I would like to have a better replacement who would play better off the bench. David Shuck says, the story on Little is that he got dehydrated and could not play, but that does not make sense. An IV and fluids and then should be fine, but he was out the whole bubble and playoffs with LA. What is his deal? Is there a more serious injury? So in case you guys didn't catch on, because David here obviously didn't hear about the deal with Nasir Little, so if you guys haven't as well, Nasir Little fainted, had some sort of fainting episode, and that's why he was sitting out. They were calling it dehydration, but it was more like he fainted and had some like question marks medically after that. Should be fine, but it was a fainting episode, not dehydration. D&D Hero 6 says, if we got Harkless back, WTF was the point of trading him away rather than just keeping him and then maybe signing him to a vet minimum contract. We had to trade him away in order to bring in Hassan Whiteside, and with Nurkic being hurt, we kind of needed a center, so we traded away Harkless so we could get that center in Hassan Whiteside. We had to use Maurice Harkless's salary in order to bring in Hassan Whiteside. Now we have Nurkic back, and just because we made that trade of Harkless for Whiteside doesn't mean that we shouldn't bring him back. That doesn't really make any sense. We traded him for what we could get back. That doesn't mean that he was worthless and we should never want him, and if we want him again, it doesn't make sense. No, he would be a good fit on this team. He knows this team. Also, he's going to make more than a vet minimum contract, so that doesn't make any sense either. But D&D Hero goes on to say, in terms of Melo, all we really have is hope he maybe comes back. I think Melo knows he is loved here for sure, but we've seen it before with Kyrie, which is the reason I never believe a player when they say they are returning. They make a public announcement saying they want to stay here. I believe Melo wants to stay here. I believe he wants to stay here. It might come down to money. Maybe we only offer him a vet minimum and New York offers him $4 million a year. He'd probably go take that $4 million a year and return to New York. I don't think that means he doesn't want to come back. I don't think it's a Kyrie situation at all, because Kyrie actually gave up money to leave Boston. He actually lost money on that deal, and he knew he was going to get a max from whichever team he ended up wanting to go to. This is a completely different situation. And then he goes on to say, I know this is a wild, crazy idea, but as crazy as this is, CJ is overrated. I think we need to find a better defense guard to help make up for Damian Lillard. This fan base underrates CJ McCollum because this fan base loves to hate on CJ McCollum far more than they should. I understand CJ McCollum's deficiencies. I know he's not a great defensive guard. I know that's kind of questionable when CJ McCollum as a defender is paired with Damian Lillard as a defender. I understand all that. But fans love to make it out like CJ McCollum is not a good player. Like he's just super overrated and worthless, right? It just doesn't make any sense to me, because without CJ McCollum, we wouldn't have made the Western Conference Finals last year. Without CJ McCollum, when our offense bogs down in the playoffs, which it usually does when teams load up on Dame, without CJ, we would be even more screwed than we already are in those situations. CJ oftentimes bails out our offense when it gets stagnant and bogged down because teams are selling out on Damian Lillard. There's oftentimes CJ McCollum keeps us afloat. We saw games in the bubble where CJ helped us win because our offense was kind of stagnant. Dame maybe wasn't playing great. I know Dame had a lot of great games, but when Dame wasn't playing great in the bubble, CJ McCollum stepped up in his place. And that's what I like about CJ and Dame. CJ steps up when Dame is struggling and he helps keep us afloat. We would not have made the playoffs this year with a Drew Holiday instead of a CJ McCollum, in my opinion. We just wouldn't have. Because a lot of our defensive issues are due to scheme. Obviously, CJ isn't a great defensive player, but a lot of our defensive issues are due to scheme as much as they are due to personnel. And then when you swap out a CJ for a guy like a Drew Holiday, we don't have that guy who's an elite scorer that can go get buckets when the offense bogs down and stagnates. So that's the thing. CJ McCollum is super underrated by this fan base. And also, if you say you want to trade CJ, come up with a guy to trade him for. Come up with a name, okay? Because a lot of people say, we just need to trade CJ for a good defensive guard. Okay, who? Ian Mudd says, how would a move for Christian Wood look like? I don't think that's possible for us because I think he'll make more than a mid-level exception, and I think he wants to go back to Detroit, believe it or not, and I think Detroit wants him. I think he honestly is a dark horse candidate for most improved and potentially an all-star next season. This guy's really, really talented. We could have had him. He was kind of tossed around the league on minimum contracts for a while, but now in Detroit, he kind of blew up and is playing up to his potential, and he's a really good player. I would love him on this team as maybe a third big off the bench who could play like 28, 30 minutes a game off the bench and be like a sixth man scoring type, you know, kind of like how the Clippers use Montrezl Harrell. I would love Christian Wood, but I don't think it's possible to go out and get him. Jordan Hutchison says, Mailbag, do you think it's worth moving the 16th pick on a deal to add experience if a team is interested? I'd be down for it. It just kind of depends on the player. I would like to hear your ideas for who we could trade the 16th pick for, but just make sure to comment it on the Trade Talk Tuesday episode coming out tomorrow instead of the Mailbag, because obviously the Trade Talk stuff is for Trade Talk Tuesday. Also, in regards to Trade Talk Tuesday, when I do it next week, I will kind of switch up the format to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting. I want to try and do a little something different with the format, just to improve the video, because I know, after a couple weeks, it's good, but it gets kind of stale with people just kind of tossing out trade ideas that make absolutely no sense. So I'll have a little different format for it next week. I'm looking forward to that. Nas, aka Draft Guru, says, what do you see happening with the center position this offseason? If I had to bet on anything, I'd bet on the Blazers bringing back Hassan Whiteside. Not even necessarily because Hassan Whiteside wants to come back, but because Hassan Whiteside probably is not going to have any suitors. Olshey, I think, wants to bring him back. He possibly could have traded him at the trade deadline, and he said he wanted to keep him, and he knew Nurkic was coming back. I think Olshey likes Hassan, so I think Olshey will give him $8 to $10 million a year, maybe over a year or two, to be our backup center, and I don't think Hassan Whiteside will get a better offer anywhere else, so I think Hassan Whiteside will be back. I would say that's probably a 50 to 60% chance that Hassan Whiteside is back in a Trailblazer uniform next season. Nas has another question. He says, is Portland a destination that could build through high-profile superstar signings if ownership decides to spend money, or is it still seen as a not-so-desirable market to play in? I'll answer it this way. I think Portland is seen as a more desirable market to play in than it ever has before, but I'm not sure if that's enough to land a high-profile superstar signing. The reason why Portland is more attractive to a free agent than it ever has been before is because of one man. That's obviously Damian Lillard. I think Damian Lillard's well-liked across the league. He's a guy that a lot of people would love to play with. I think if LeBron had a top 3 list of players that he wants to play with, I think Dame would be on that list. CJ McCollum is well-liked across the league as well. So that's the thing. In order to land one of those high-profile superstar signings, we have to have star players that are liked, that have connections across the league, and a free agent has to say, oh, if I go there, that team is definitely going to be in contention. But still, I'm not sure if it's enough. I'm not going to say that we have a desirable enough market for a high-profile signing until we actually get that high-profile signing. Nayland says, trade idea, any interest in pursuing Tim Hardaway Jr.? This is a good question for the Trade Talk Tuesday episode, so leave it over there. Rock Solid Gaming says, when do the Dame 7s come out, and what did you think of the Dame Dollar Kobe track? I don't know when the Dame 7s come out. I would like to get a pair. I need some new basketball shoes, and I've always liked the Dames, but I don't really pay attention to launch dates and that type of stuff. What did I think of the Dame Dollar Kobe track? The lyricism was good. You know, it was a good tribute to Kobe. I thought Dame's flow was a little bit off in certain parts. He kind of went back to what he was doing when he first started rapping, where he's trying to fit in too many words and just wasn't really stringing together his flow. His flow didn't really have a rhythm with the song. So, you know, I was kind of disappointed in that because the lyricism was really good and he had Snoop Dogg on it. And in previous songs, Dame's flow has been more creative and more on point, and it's made him sound a lot better as a rapper. But he kind of, it wasn't his best track in terms of just the sound and just his flow on it. The lyricism, of course, though, was phenomenal. And then the last part says, trade dream. CJ, Simons, and Collins for Giannis, or Simons and Collins and picks for Jimmy Butler type player. Loving the channel. Go Nuggets game 7, I guess. This was asked before the Nuggets won game 7. They took care of business. CJ, Simons, and Collins is not enough for Giannis. You have to put in a lot more into that trade package. And I don't think Giannis will be available. I honestly think Giannis is going to resign in Milwaukee. So, yeah, I don't think that we really have any chance at trading for Giannis at this point if, Milwaukee isn't desperate to get off him because they don't want to risk him leaving. Collins and picks for a Jimmy Butler type player. Yeah, Jimmy Butler ain't going anywhere, so I don't know what other type of player you're thinking of. But yeah, because there's really no other Jimmy Butler type players available on the market right now. Steve says, Mailbag, if the Thunder start to make moves to further their rebuild, can the Blazers pick up Dennis Schroeder? Or what can the Blazers get from the Thunder if they start going full rebuild? Dennis Schroeder is really the only piece that I could see Portland maybe looking at, but the problem is they'd have to trade Trevor Ariza for Schroeder, and that makes no sense from a fit perspective. Also, Dennis Schroeder before this season was never a good three-point shooter and never a good defender, so that's not really a good fit for a guard off the bench. But this year he improved his three-point shooting and from all accounts improved his defense. I don't know if this past year was just an aberration, if it was just kind of an outlier, or if he actually truly improved and will remain a good three-point shooter and a good defender. The Dennis Schroeder from this past year would be a solid third guard. I just don't know how much confidence I put in his year this past season. Another question from Steve. He says, what do you think the Western Conference playoffs will look like next year? It's hard to say because offseason hasn't happened yet, so after the offseason, come back with this question. Trevin says, Mailbag, what are your thoughts on Eric saying he's a better passer than you? He's not. And that wraps up your guys' questions from the past week. Leave a mailbag question down below, and Eric will answer it next week. It doesn't even necessarily have to be Blazers related. You can ask Eric what another team should do in this upcoming offseason. I know Eric would love some more draft questions if you guys got them. I just know these videos do best if you have kind of a wide range of newish questions. We tend to get a lot of the same questions, so try and be a little bit creative in your question asking. I'm sure Eric would appreciate that. So anyway, that's a wrap for this video. I'll catch you guys later. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.